Hello! Welcome to another episode of Low Carb in the Leaves. I am Dr. Mary Barson from Real Life Medicine, and the wind is blowing my phone stand. Sorry about that. Hope it's not too wobbly for you guys. Hi! So this week I said we would talk about cholesterol because it is one of the most common questions we get as low carb doctors who encourage people to eat whole foods, healthy whole foods, including the fat that is in healthy, whole, natural foods. It can make a lot of people worry about what, the egg yolk, the avocado, the nuts, the little bit of fat on their meat is going to do to their serum cholesterol. So I'm going to dive into that more this week. Yesterday, I discussed that dietary cholesterol really doesn't have a major role to play in your blood cholesterol or your blood lipids. So, and I mentioned that the most important thing to really think about when you're thinking about cholesterol and heart disease risk is metabolic syndrome. This is one of my absolute favourite topics. It's at the heart of everything. Metabolic disease is at the heart of pretty much every chronic lifestyle related illness. It's at the heart of everything that Lucy and I try and help people with. It is absolutely pivotal, and when we help people cure their metabolic disease or reverse their metabolic disease, nothing makes me happier, pretty much. Okay, so I'm going to start off with what is metabolic syndrome. Basically, there's lots of ways to describe it, but it is essentially a triglyceride rich, so it's the fats in the blood, rich, insulin resistant sort of a group of issues, all a group of illnesses, group of diagnoses that all increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. And cardiovascular disease, when I say that, cardiovascular disease, that's really talking about all of the diseases where the plaques, the arteries get clogged up with plaque, atherosclerosis. And this can cause a range of illnesses, heart attacks, angina, ischemic strokes, and peripheral vascular disease, as well as some types of dementia as well. So that's cardiovascular disease. And metabolic syndrome is a name given to a group of conditions that increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. And they include obesity, particularly central obesity around the tummy. They include decreased glucose tolerance, insulin resistance, increased insulin, pre-diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, high blood pressure. Also deranged lipids, and deranged lipids is a technical term for a unhealthy looking cholesterol profile with decreased high density lipoproteins, the protective cholesterol, and increased LDLs, what is traditionally called the dangerous LDLs. And I will go more into cholesterol profiles probably tomorrow. That's a bit beyond this. Now we are talking about metabolic syndrome. And as you can see there, the cholesterol issues are grouped with metabolic syndrome. They are part of metabolic syndrome. And I think that it is folly to zero in on cholesterol on its own and completely by ignoring the rest of metabolic syndrome, because it's really the metabolic disease that is the issue. So obesity, pre-diabetes, high blood sugar, decreased glucose tolerance, increased blood pressure, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, all of these things together are metabolic disease. So, and I should say, there's a few other things that kind of more on the periphery that get snuck in there as well. Metabolic disease also includes polycystic ovarian syndrome, can be put in there, as well as sleep apnea, and some kind of cancers as well. It's not the only factor, but certainly some kinds of breast cancer and colon cancer are also associated with this metabolic disease. All right, guys, it's complex, but we're going to get there. We're definitely going to get there together. All right, so it is metabolic disease, metabolic syndrome, that really is at the heart of causing the atherosclerosis, the heart disease, the strokes, the things that we want to avoid. But what causes metabolic syndrome? Well, it's complicated. Definitely multifactorial, and it comes down to not just genetics, nor does it come down to your environment. It's not nature or nurture, it's nurture plus nature. It's the interplay between our genetics and our environment. And in particular, it's a mismatch between our modern environment is so very, very out of sync and mismatched with the evolutionary pressures that molded our genetics as ancestrally. So we are genetically basically identical to humans from 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years ago. Humans that were hunter-gatherers living wild in nature. We're genetically the same as them, but we live in this high-stress modern world with high-carb diets, a huge toxic load, sedentary lifestyles, artificial lights, all of these issues that are mismatched to our genetics. And metabolic syndrome, I didn't mention this earlier, it's incredibly common. About probably 1 in 3 Aussies, Australian adults, have metabolic syndrome. It is absolutely rife, and it's the same across the Western world and becoming the same across the third world as well. And genetically speaking, cavemen, to use that slightly inaccurate historical term, but you know what I mean when I talk about cavemen. So humans from tens of thousands of years ago, wild hunter-gatherer humans, would have become insulin resistant, and it would have been kind of helpful for them. So say they, at a time like summer, when there was lots and lots of fruit around and they could gorge themselves on carbs because they couldn't eat a high carb diet most of the time, but in summer and autumn, lots of fruit around, it made sense for them to eat as much as they could, and it made sense for their bodies to store it as fat. And that's what insulin resistance does. It really puts us in a fat storing mode and prevents us from burning fat. So their ability to do this, to be able to make hay while the sun shines, so to speak, would have been a real genetic advantage, and probably would have overcome the genetic disadvantage of getting atherosclerosis with metabolic syndrome. So for our ancestors, it was probably helpful for them to have this inherent ability to become insulin resistant from time to time to store fat. But for us, it's basically summer and autumn all the time from a genetic point of view. We don't have any dietary winters or springs where high carb food is less available. We're in a constant state of summer, so to speak, with this high carb food around us all the time. And this is not good. This is a real mismatch. This is at the heart of metabolic syndrome. And it isn't just diet. It is complex. There are quite a few things that contribute to metabolic syndrome, and it isn't completely well understood. But certainly chronic stress, inflammation, the certain toxins really contribute, in particular bisphenol A, this toxin that is in plastics, has been shown in itself it is an independent risk factor for obesity and type 2 diabetes. Just down the road here, at Deakin University, some wonderful work led by Vincent Laudet was looking into this, and they discovered this link between, they helped discover this link between BPA and obesity and type 2 diabetes. It's poor sleep, it's sedentary lifestyle, it's a whole milieu, a whole factor of things that over time damage our metabolism in people with a genetic susceptibility. But it isn't it isn't as simple as high carb diets equal metabolic syndrome, because I mentioned that 1 in 3 adult Australians have metabolic syndrome. That means 2 out of 3 don't, and a lot of those 2 out of 3 are eating high carb diets that we've been told to eat. So it is complex, and the treatment is also quite complex. So I mentioned that the disrupted lipid profile is just one part of metabolic syndrome. But metabolic syndrome all put together is basically what is at the cause of these chronic lifestyle diseases. Particularly, we're talking about heart disease and strokes. They're the ones that we really want to avoid. We also want to avoid, obviously, cancers and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because that can lead to liver failure. And so we don't completely understand all of the causes, but it is going to be, we do know a lot. And we do know that what the treatment is. And the treatment isn't super simple. The treatment isn't, take this pill and your metabolic syndrome would go away. It'd be awesome if that was the case, possibly, but it isn't. The treatment is getting down to healing your metabolism by reversing those lifestyle factors that damaged it over time in the first place. And you kind of need to do a lot of it. It's not simply a case of get all BPA plastics out of your life and your metabolic syndrome will go away. That's not quite simple. I think getting all BPA plastics out of your life as much as you can is a great idea, but on its own, it's not enough. It's not simply a case of improved sleep and your metabolic syndrome will go away. Although it is very good for you, it's probably not enough in itself. It's not even a case of go for a walk every day and your metabolic syndrome will go away, although that is very good for you. One of the most powerful levers that we have for metabolic syndrome is food. It's not all about food, but food is one of the most powerful ways to heal your body and to heal your metabolism and to, in many cases, reverse these chronic illnesses or at least stop them from getting any worse. Food. And in particular, the food that is really useful for metabolic syndrome is low carb, real food. And Dr. Lucy and I really emphasise the real component, because you can eat low carb and have quite a lot of processed toxic junk on a low carb diet. You could eat, Macca's burgers without the buns. You could eat heaps of processed bars and artificially sweetened desserts. You can really eat quite crappy on a low carb diet, if you put your mind to it. So low carb is important. It is really important for the weight loss and for getting insulin down, but the real food component is really important too. The real foods that we recommend, foods close to their natural form, are low inflammatory, so they're going to heal, the inflammatory side of metabolic disease. They also have got a low toxic load as well, so they're going to improve that toxic burden that contributes to metabolic disease. And also in ways that humans, scientists don't even really understand yet, we evolved to eat real food, and real food has this positive interplay with our genetics in ways that we, don't even completely understand. So food is like this wonderful information. The food that we eat, it's like coding for our bodies. It literally tells our cells what to do and who to be. So eating real food, the food that is more in line with our human genetics, with those hunter-gatherer genetics, heals your metabolism in absolutely profound ways. Food is not everything, but it is extremely powerful. So that is my talk on metabolic syndrome. I hope you can see how really the high insulin's effects, so metabolic syndrome, high insulin combined with insulin resistance, has many effects on the body, and only one of them is to cause this deranged lipid profile, the deranged cholesterol profile. And if you completely zero in on that, if you just ignore everything else and just like cholesterol, you really are missing the forest for the trees. And it's important to really take a step back and have a look at the health, your whole health in a holistic way, to have a look at your whole metabolic health in a holistic way, because things like blood pressure, your triglyceride levels, your insulin levels, your blood sugar levels, the health of your liver, all of these things are probably as important, but even more important. But when you look at the whole picture, you can get an idea of your metabolic health holistically, and then you can treat it holistically. So if you just go right bang into cholesterol, you miss the point. So I like to take a step back and look at the whole health and look at what we can do to heal people's entire health. And so often, food, sleep, stress management, improved sleep, intermittent fasting, all of these things, all the things that we love to teach and coach in real life medicine, these things are what helps heal the metabolism, helps reduce the risk of heart disease and strokes and all these horrible things that we want to avoid. And although, cholesterol profiles are an important piece of the puzzle, they aren't everything. All right, everyone. That was a big topic. It's a great topic, but it's a big topic. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your low carb real food and its wonderful healing effects that it has on your metabolism. And I will come back tomorrow with some more information. All right. See you guys.